Welcome back to the farm, everyone. It's like June the 12th, I think. I'm finally back at left field for a little while. Farmer Brent is not with me this trip, but he did load up my truck with all the little seedling babies that he started. So I've managed to get, see if I can show you, on the messy deck, I got bins of clothes and food all unpacked, and now my next job is to go and deal with the truck. And I have to say, after a long drive, I'm kind of tired. But there's some little ones in here who are not going to settle for being left for too much longer. So let me flip you around and I'll show you what my next task is: unloading the truck. So I waited until the next day, and then I started bringing the plants all the way down into the garden and laying them out into the positions that I figured that they roughly needed to be, spacing everything out, figuring out which beds, which plants were going to go into, and whether or not I was going to have space. And then the job of actually planting begun. So I managed to get all of the tomatoes and all of the tomatillos planted in one day. The next day, I laid out all of the squash and all of the corn and got those put into the ground. And then I added the pole bean seeds in and around the corn. So I am heading back home tomorrow. I've gotten everything planted, and I thought I would just take a last walk through the garden before I close it up and head back, and I would take you along and give you a little tour. So this garden is kind of divided into 4 quadrants, and we can sort of think of them as a northwest, northeast, southeast, southwest, if you're kind of going clockwise. In the northeast area of the garden, this is where we're putting the tomatoes this year. So we've stuck these hoops in, and when we come up in July to spend the summer, we will cover them in plastic at that time. I don't want to do that now because they need to get rain on them if they have any opportunity, and also if we end up with some bad winds, I'd like to be here to rectify any tossed about plastic. So the last trip we came up, we brought 11 tomato plants with us, mostly yellow taxis and bumblebees, and they have done really well on their own, and they've set fruit on already. This trip, so there was 11 of those. This trip I brought 18 other tomatoes, Some of them, the varieties, I'm not really sure of because they volunteered. So some of them we planted and some of them were volunteers that came up and we potted them and tended them. These two right here actually were volunteers, but it's very clear that they are vintage wine because vintage wine has a distinctly different leaf than the other tomatoes, and it's one we grew last year. Some of them I don't know for sure what they are, and then others Brent did plant and label as a beefsteak variety. I can see that we have some flea beetles on already, which is kind of sad. But anyway, there's another vintage wine, or two vintage wines. And then I've also gone through and added a bunch of basil down at the bottom. They grow well together. So, and then on this side, I've left room because we've got about 20 or so more. There's a tobacco. So there's like 20 some more tomato plants that need to come up next trip. These are tomatillos. We have never grown them before, but they seem like they're doing really well. So I'm kind of excited to see how tomatillos are. They're putting on lots of fruit already. And then there's another tobacco and some marigolds. The marigolds are good for encouraging pollinators. That down there would be the southeast corner, and there's not much happening in there. There is some rhubarb growing, and there's a few strawberries, but most of this area we've kept it covered in black plastic to try and get rid of the weed seeds, and we'll be planting this with cucumbers when we come back up. I did go ahead and put some tobacco in. Tobacco acts as an attractant for a lot of the little flying pests. So their leaves are kind of sticky and acts like a bit of a fly strip. So it should hopefully help with the flea beetles, but we shall see. Anyway, next trip this will get planted. All right, this is the southwest corner, and we have garlic. 200 cloves of garlic got planted. This trip I went through painstakingly to try and make sure that every single scape got cut off, and from what I understand that should help them to put out bigger bulbs and not put their energy into the scapes. And then on the back there, the grapes, for the first time ever, 3 or 4 of the grape plants are actually setting on little grapes, so that's kind of exciting. Up here I brought the trailing squashes, like the butternuts and the buttercups and the pumpkins, and I planted them alongside some corn. And then at the base of the corn I planted a bunch of bean seeds, which obviously are not coming up yet, but this is referred to as a Three Sisters method of planting. So there was some kale still growing from through the winter, and I just decided to leave it for now. It's not hurting anything, but if it gets too bolted and yucky, we'll pull it out. Anyway, there's some more corn. So around each corn is the beans. The idea being that the corn will grow up fairly tall, and then they're a pole bean variety, that they will climb the corn, and that the squashes are all looking a little bit sad right at the moment because it was a pretty hot day here, so they seem to perk up in the evenings when it cools off. But they should grow and creep along the beds and cover the soil, essentially, create some shade and help to retain some moisture. So 4 more corn, 15 corn. There's some fast adding. Another group, and then some more squash. I am going to give these guys some water before I close up for the night. Down in this bed we've got thyme growing very happily. And then in the very bottom corner we have Jerusalem artichokes, or sunchokes they're also called. I don't know the exact varieties of all of these grapes, but they are all wine varieties, and they're all ones really intended for this southern interior region, so we'll see what happens. The black plastic along here is a bit of an eyesore, and my hope for this year is that I can get a grip on the weeds. I would like to get a load of bark mulch brought in and put down a bunch of cardboard and smother them out. But until I get the bark mulch, this is sort of helping to get a little bit of control, because this is a particularly bad weedy area. The raspberries are doing really well. They are absolutely loaded with bees and loaded with blossoms. So it's looking like it'll be another really good raspberry year. I don't know if you can see the bees in there, but they're just very busy. And last of all, this is the northwest section of the garden, and this is where I put 10 zucchini plants, kind of alternating yellow ones and golden ones and green ones. I kind of prefer the yellow ones, but they're all good. So they seem fairly happy. They were really wilty earlier too, but they seem to have perked up as it's starting to cool off now. The hops plants are out of control like always. I pruned them back a little bit, just down at the bottom where they had big long vines heading off in different directions. I planted some beans under there, and we'll see if they germinate. This bed here is onions. We tried some Walla Wallas on the end, and then we have a Spanish onion and a yellow kind of onion variety, just your basic yellow onion that's better for storage. And then on the back there is potatoes. They seem to be doing pretty good. There's another row kind of in behind there. I don't know if you can see. There is 2 rows of potatoes. Oops. So it looks like we may get some potatoes this year. But again, the flea beetles are already going after them, so that tobacco needs to get growing and do its job. Help save the potato. So that's about it. That's the state of the vegetable garden, June 18th. I should be back in a couple of weeks. It'll be the beginning of July by then, and Farmer Brent will be with me. It'll be much nicer gardening with his help and his company. So until then, thanks for watching this video. Take care, and bye-bye.